In these dark and uncertain days, Torah is our weekly compass, a grounding and definitely a charge for us to continue to choose life in the face of what feels like enduring darkness, suffering, and a great deal of death. However, this week, for the first time in many, many months, I let myself feel a little hopeful. I felt some uplift, some real hope. I watched Kamala Harris's acceptance speech this week as the first African American and Asian American woman on the Democratic ticket for vice president. I just want to say that again because I watched it over and over and over. Her acceptance speech this week is the first African American and Asian American woman on the Democratic ticket for vice president. I usually watch comedy over and over again to lift me up. But this didn't feel like comedy, and this did not feel political to me. This felt like something that my starved spirit and soul needed. I needed spiritual and moral and psychological uplift, as we do, all of us today. I need to feel better. There has not been a day in the past 6 months where I've not had a moment of grief, of angst, sadness, loss, a yearning for the past better days, and fear and frustration about how I'm supposed to make a difference and change the trajectory. How are we supposed to bend the arc back to where it was supposed to be going? Women have not held elected office in this country for very long, we must not forget. The first woman elected to serve in the House of Representatives, you might not know this, and I didn't either, was a nice Jewish girl in 1917 from, of all places, Montana. Jeanette Rankin won election as a Republican in Montana after campaigning on horseback. She was nationally known as a leader in the suffrage movement and helped women in Montana to gain the vote in 1914. She promised to work, ready for this because it hasn't changed that much, for laws that women shall be paid the same wages as men for equal amounts of work. We still have work to do. Her arrival in Congress on April 1st, 1917 was literally front page news across the country. And on that day, she cast her first vote. And back home, the Helena Independent in Montana cast her as a dupe of the Kaiser and a crying schoolgirl. The first woman elected to Congress was a Jew who campaigned on horseback in Montana, not that many years ago. This week I saw Rabbi, our own California Senator Kamala Harris, a Bay Area native who I have worked with and yes, I have supported for 20 years of service to our country. A woman who spoke truth to power and spoke loving words to the aching hearts and souls of people in this country. She reminded me and even rekindled in me a love of this country, reminded me of why I came to California over 30 years ago and of my democratic responsibility as a patriotic American. She, in fact, reminded me why I was a patriotic American. And she reminded me of the values that we as progressive Jews believe in deeply, and which I believe should guide us going forward as a country. Lifting up immigrants' rights, equality for our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, stating clearly in words and the fact that she is here and has arrived, Black Lives Matter. Going forward with a healthy economy built on economic justice, promising that actual science and a viable plan will lead the way to end COVID-19's tragic impact on this country. And finally, and for me most importantly, one word and one value that rang out to these Jewish ears. Senator Harris told the nation that above any other title she has held in her life, city attorney, attorney general of the state of California, Senator Kamala Harris, the most important title is the one given to her by the Emhoff kids, her children, who call her simply the endearing Mamala. Mamala, we know what that means. Mamala in the White House? That's wow. You don't have to speak Yiddish to feel wow. Tonight we're only 4 Shabbatot away from the Jewish High Holy Days. It's hard to believe. It is hard to believe it's been 6 months. We've been on the screen and that we are entering into Yamim Noraim in this way. There are also 81 days until the 2020 election. Next Shabbat will be the first of Elul. We will begin to blast the shofar for the 29 days leading up to Rosh Hashanah. The shofar blasts. What are you going to hear in them that you've never heard before? What will they wake you up to do? How will you choose life on the first day of 5781, and what will you do to ensure that our democracy is still viable and alive on November 3rd? As your clergy will be working to be sure you have every support to write yourself in the book of life.